That's Chris Watts' mistress, Nicole Kessinger, blowing him kisses and professing her love for him.
I am having a wonderful time. You mean a lot to me, and I'm glad that you're having a blast. I am so out of breath.
The video, recorded just weeks before Watts murdered his wife and 2 daughters, was uncovered by HLN for their series Lies, Crimes, and Video, airing Saturday. Kyle Peltz is the show's producer.
There's photos and videos of them on a secret trip to the Great Sand Dunes while Shanann and Chris's 2 baby girls were away on vacation.
There you go, baby.
That's Watts you hear behind the camera.
You're so damn sexy.
HLN also obtained voicemail messages Nicole Kessinger left for Watts. She giggles like a schoolgirl.
Hi. It's me. I miss your face. I was just calling to say hi.
Watts also took these provocative photos of his 30-year-old co-worker. He stored them in a hidden folder on his smartphone.
He hides this on an app called Secret Calculator. It looks and functions like a regular calculator, but when you enter 4 digits, it's a secret vault. It opens up and it reveals hidden photos and videos.
Watts claims he came clean about the affair to his pregnant wife Shanann the night he killed her and their daughters. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave and dumped his girls in silos of crude oil. The mistress told cops she had no idea he was planning to murder his.
Welcome to The Hidden Verdict, the channel where every case pulls you further into the unknown. Hit subscribe and step with us into the darkest corners of the human mind. It began with a question no one expected to hear again, especially not from a man serving multiple life sentences for the murders of his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. The call was short, almost routine, until Chris Watts lowered his voice and asked something so disturbing, so strangely calm, that investigators froze in disbelief. He asked, "Is the baby born yet?" A question that should not exist. A question that had nothing to do with Shanann, Bella, Celeste, or baby Nico. A question that dragged the name Nicole Kessinger back into the shadows of a case the world thought it understood. The guard who overheard the call said Chris spoke as if he were checking on something he had been waiting for, something he believed was still connected to him. That single moment reopened wounds investigators had tried to close. Why would Chris be asking about a baby? Why now? And most of all, whose baby did he think was being born? The words carried a quiet terror because they hinted at a secret the world never confirmed. And as this new detail leaked into the public, the question grew heavier: did he believe Nicole was having a child, his child? Before we go deeper, pause for a moment and subscribe to The Hidden Verdict, because this story is about to twist in a direction even seasoned investigators weren't prepared for. The next steps in this chapter pull apart Chris's mindset, the timing of the call, and why that question matters more than anything he's said in years. He didn't ask about forgiveness. He didn't ask about the families he destroyed. Instead, he asked about a baby that should not exist, yet somehow, in his mind, it did. And this is where everything begins to unravel. After the murders, Nicole Kessinger vanished from public life as if she had never existed. Her name dissolved from records, her addresses wiped clean, and her trail buried beneath layers of legal protection and silence. The woman who once stood at the center of a national tragedy seemed to evaporate overnight, leaving behind only unanswered questions and the cold echo of her last known words to investigators. Some believed she fled for safety. Others believed she fled for secrecy. But the truth is that Nicole's disappearance created a vacuum filled with speculation, fear, and theories investigators could never publicly confirm. In the months that followed, rumors surfaced claiming she had changed her identity and moved across states, possibly even out of the country. No social media. No job records under her old name. No trace. She became a ghost, one who had once been deeply entangled with Chris Watts in ways the public still debates. And yet, even as she rebuilt her life in the shadows, one question remained: did she carry something from that relationship into her new identity? something that Chris might still be thinking about today. Investigators were careful when asked about Nicole. Too careful. They avoided certain timelines, dodged connections that reporters kept trying to make. It became clear that there was more behind the scenes, something far too sensitive to reveal. And now, with Chris asking about a baby, that locked door creaks open once again. Before we move forward, take a moment to like this video and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this chapter raises a question most people never expected to revisit. If Nicole truly cut all ties, why would Chris still believe she was connected to him? And more importantly, why would he think a baby was involved? Inside the prison walls, where days blur into each other and time becomes a weight no one can carry, Chris Watts developed routines that the guards described as quiet, too quiet. He rarely spoke unless spoken to. He avoided conflict. He read the same pages of the Bible over and over. But beneath that stillness was a pattern that only a few inmates noticed. He never let go of Nicole Kessinger. Even years later, even after the world moved on, her name lingered in the corners of his conversations like unfinished business. Inmates who shared cells near him said Chris sometimes brought up Nicole in moments that made no sense. He would mention her future, her safety, or whether she found peace. To some, it sounded like regret. To others, it sounded like obsession. And when one inmate asked why he still thought about her, Chris simply said, "Some things don't just end." It was vague, unsettling, and it hinted at a connection he believed still existed somewhere beyond those concrete walls. There were also the letters, strange, emotional writings he never sent, found later in his belongings during routine checks. Some were apologies. Some were confessions. Some read more like fantasies about a life he believed they might have had. And in a handful of them, he referenced something unfinished, something he wished he could see. Those details never made headlines, but inside the prison, they shaped a disturbing truth. Chris's mind had never fully left the life he tried to build outside Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. Before we continue, make sure you share this video with someone who follows true crime, because this next part is where the story sharpens and becomes something far more unsettling. Chris's question wasn't random. It came from a place he had been holding onto for years, a place tied directly to the darkest rumors that investigators once whispered about behind closed doors. The rumor began quietly, whispered between investigators who were piecing together timelines long before the public even knew an affair existed. It wasn't something they could prove, and it wasn't something they were willing to say out loud, but the possibility lingered like a shadow they couldn't ignore. During the months Chris Watts and Nicole Kessinger were involved, detectives questioned whether she could have been pregnant, or whether she believed she might have been. The timeline was tight, almost impossible, yet not impossible enough to dismiss entirely. Nicole's internet searches during the affair raised eyebrows. They weren't just about wedding dresses and secluded getaways. Some of them hinted at future plans, major life changes, and questions about starting over with someone new. Investigators noticed the pattern but lacked solid evidence to push further. Still, the idea hung in the air, unconfirmed but unsettling. Had there been a moment where Nicole suspected something? And if so, did she ever tell Chris? When Chris asked, "Is the baby born yet?" years later, that old rumor resurfaced with a force investigators hadn't felt since the early days of the case. The question matched too closely with whispers they had kept locked away. It forced them to revisit timelines, interviews, and the statements Nicole gave, statements where she insisted she had ended everything and wanted no further connection. But Chris's words suggested he believed otherwise. He spoke as if something had continued without him, something he expected to exist. And for those who knew the rumors, his question wasn't just strange, it was chilling. Before we enter the final chapter, take a moment to subscribe to The Hidden Verdict, because what comes next digs directly into the psychological truth behind the question, and reveals why it may be the darkest part of this entire mystery. In the end, the question wasn't really about a baby. It was about control, memory, and a mind that never fully accepted the consequences of reality. When Chris Watts asked, "Is the baby born yet?" investigators realized it wasn't the words that mattered most, but the psychology behind them. A man who took the lives of his own family now sat in a cell imagining the possibility of a future he destroyed, one where someone else, someone far removed from the truth, might still be tied to him. It exposed a part of Chris that had never truly changed. Experts who analyzed the call said it reflected a delusion formed from guilt, fantasy, and a fractured sense of identity. Chris had always shaped alternate realities in his mind, the version of himself he wanted to be, the life he thought he deserved, the relationship he believed he could escape into. And that delusion didn't stop in prison. If anything, isolation fed it. In silence, he had nothing but time to rewrite memories, replay choices, and imagine outcomes that could never exist. Whether a pregnancy ever happened no longer mattered. The real revelation was that Chris believed there might have been one. His question hinted at unfinished fantasies, lingering attachment, and a warped hope that something from that affair had survived beyond the walls he now lives behind. It wasn't about Nicole. It wasn't about a child. It was about a man still trying to hold on to a piece of the world he once used to escape from the family he ultimately destroyed. And as we close this investigation, take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to The Hidden Verdict. Because in cases like this, the truth doesn't end where the story stops. It ends where the human mind finally breaks, and Chris Watts' mind may still be breaking.